Kinsler, and I am going to edit this basic portrait of my daughter in her Snow White costume. We took some images the other day to create a Snow White composite, which I will do with a different image, but I just loved this sweet little portrait. So I'm going to do a pretty simple edit, I think. Maybe. So let's get started. I am going into this image without a plan, which I typically do. It may not be the best way, but at least you will hear my thought process and see my errors. The first thing I do when I pull the image into Adobe Camera Raw is I go to my presets. This is a preset that I set, not one that came with it or that I bought, but I'll click it. So, and then I'll come and show you what it did. So this is just a sharpen preset that I created for myself, where my sharpening here you'll see is at 65, the radius at 1.6, the detail at 25, the masking is at 70. This masking slider right here it is important for it to be higher than the sharpening, or you are going to make some extra noise. Noise reduction is at 20, detail at 50, contrast at 20, color noise reduction is at 25, detail is at 50, and smoothness is at 50. Now, I will tell you, I recently updated my Photoshop and it updated my ACR, and honestly, it was an accident. And Camera Raw looks very different to me right now and has for about a week. So I might fumble a little bit in here. So I'm going to zoom in just to get a better look. There are lots of functions in ACR. I don't correct everything in my initial, like this green bruising looking spot on her forehead. This is a green color cast from her background being all around trees. And even though there is a brush option here, I typically like to do my masking in Photoshop. So I'm just going to make overall changes right now. I'm going to, I think, increase the warmth just a little bit. I'm going to bring up the contrast to about 12. I'm going to bring up the highlights and bring down the shadows. I will probably add a little vibrance. I think I'm going to leave the saturation. I don't think I'm going to add any curves or light or anything right now. I will go back and do that, and I'm just going to go ahead and go into Photoshop. I'm going to start probably by doing a foundation. Like I said, I run a lot of actions from other people or that I make myself, but I will make sure that I use my notes and try very hard not to use any actions for you today. I do love actions because they speed up my workflow so much. Anytime I do something that I like, if I've written it down, I try to make an action for it just to save my time, because I do spend a lot of time on an edit. So any bit of time savers are great for me. All right, so I've duplicated my image. I'm going to back up though and show you in case you're not familiar. So I am working on a Mac laptop. I work on a MacBook Pro with a Wacom tablet and pen. There are several ways you can duplicate this background. You can do Command J, which duplicates the layer. And I like to go, I just drag it here to the plus sign and that duplicates it as well. Now I'm going to go back to ACR, but this time it's going to be through the filter, through Photoshop. I'm just more comfortable with masking in Photoshop rather than here in ACR. All right, so what I'm about to do will make the skin look kind of funky because I do plan to brush it off the skin, so keep that in mind as we go. I'm just going to fiddle with the background. So I am moving my highlights down, way down, and my shadows up. Notice I did the opposite when I was adjusting the overall image, but now I'm just working on my background. Let's move my blacks and I'm gonna add some clarity. And let's add a good bit of dehaze. Dehazing really separates the subject from the background. It kind of pushes the subject forward. Okay, and I'm gonna go to detail. And let's add some sharpening. Once I've put a value in here, then I have control of the rest of my sliders. Let's leave my radius at 1, and let's bring my we'll leave my detail at 25 and the mask at 0, so just a little bit of sharp in there. Remember, it's just for the background. All right, so here was my before and after. Before and after. So you can see the detail that has been brought out in the background. And here, I don't know. All right, I'm gonna just go ahead and hit OK for that. Add a layer mask, that's this button down here. And I'm just going to, let's see, fix my brush up here. My opacity is on 100, my flow is at 100. It's a soft brush. I look over here in my colors. Remember, white means on, black means off, and I want to brush it off of her skin and body, the whole subject probably. So I'm going to flip to a black brush to brush off. And I use my shortcuts. I'll be honest, I have never used Photoshop on a PC. I have only ever used my Mac. So I don't know the shortcuts for PCs. But I can tell you my Mac shortcuts, my most favorite shortcut ever is Command Z, the undo button. But to flip your brush, your shortcut is going to be oh man, what happened? There we go. Function X flips my brush. Function X. Okay, there we go. All right, so we have before and we have after, where she is not touched. Just the background. Okay, now I'm going to duplicate the background again. Move that layer to the top, and I'm going to change it to multiply mode. I'm going to bring it down to about 17% opacity, just to deepen it up. So remember, I got a lot of my detail back with this layer here that I did in ACR of my background. I can see the separation in the leaves right here, where the light's coming through that I could not see before, and then this one has deepened it. And again, I'm going to brush that all the way off my subject. You could, or I could have done both layers and stuck them into a group and brushed them off all at one time. That might have been the more efficient way, which is maybe why my edits take so long. There we go. Okay. Make sure I've gotten it off everywhere I want it off. I think I'm going to go ahead and take a snapshot. That's this little button here, and if you scroll up, you'll be able to see your progress as you go. That's where we started with import. Here's where we are now. All right, so I do work somewhat destructively. I like to merge things unless I'm compositing. Now, when I am doing a big composite, I try very, very hard not to merge many things or flatten until the very end, because it's just too much to go back and make corrections when you've messed up on a layer in a major composite that has maybe 600 layers. All right, so I've duplicated my image again, my background layer, after I merged, and I'm gonna go, I'm gonna fix this bruising. Look, it's not actual bruising, but this green color cast on her forehead. All right, I think I'm gonna go to my color mixer. And let's try, oh, not luminance, sorry. Well, maybe I can push that green out. All right. Let's push a little of that yellow out too, just to try to adjust that spot. I am going to mask it only on the color cast. Oh, I didn't mean to grab you, Blue. Sometimes my Wacom pen gets a little bit irritable. I think I need to replace the tip. All right, that looks good to me so far. So I'm gonna add a mask. Now I'm going to invert my layer. So Command I to invert, and see I'm on a black brush still, so I need to flip that brush to a white brush because white means on, and I am painting it on my color cast. Only where I see that green. Lightens it up just a little bit. I still don't love that skin color, so let's work on it a little more. Maybe if we add a little magenta, and when you add on a color balance, so this is a color balance adjustment layer, when you add one color, you're essentially pulling out the other color. So as I add magenta, I'm taking out green. Same way on these other sliders. If you add cyan, you take out red. If you add yellow, you're taking out blue. And I'm going to invert that layer as well because I don't want her to be quite so red. I think I'm going to lower my opacity of my brush down to about 30% and just build up to where I think it is gone. Because there are some parts that are more green than others. Ah, now I see a big difference. There we go. All right, so her skin's still not where I want it to be, maybe not the color I want it to be, but it will be. At least that part. There we go. I like that much better. No more bruising. I might add a little magenta here because it just looks very desaturated. Okay. All right, so now let's look. Do we have any major concerns that I want to get rid of? Most of this, like, I'm not going to waste time getting rid of these little bumps here because they will be gone by the time I blend my dodging and burning. Let's see. Her blue fingernail polish finally came off. I have been having to fix that. All right. Okay. I don't really see any major issues, but if I end up finding some, we will take care of it. Okay. Next thing I often do is add a little more blur bokeh, but this really has quite a bit already because I did shoot it from a pretty close distance at 200 millimeters. So let's see. The next thing I'm going to do is liquify her hair. So rather than merge right now, I'm going to do Command Option Shift E, which is basically going to make a merged layer on top. So I still have these adjustment layers here, but now they're all merged into this one layer. So if I mess up on this one layer, these guys are still there. They're still adjustable. Everything is merged here, and I believe it's called a timestamp. And I'm going to go to Filter and Liquify. All right, now this is not a needed step for everyone or everything, but I just love a little poof in the hair. And I'll be quite honest with you, the amount of effort that I put into fixing my kids' hair is slim. It'd be probably a big time saver, but usually I am a full-time working mom, and usually we are, Command Z, we are just, hey, let's go take your picture right now. And we're just running out whenever they seem happy. And the light is decent, then we do it. So these are not staged photo shoots. These are my kids in my front yard. Okay, so I've done this liquify, and you're gonna see that perhaps sometimes, like right here on the arm, that the liquify of the dress has bled over into the body somewhere. Like I don't want to mess up her fingers or anything else. So I'm going to do a layer mask, and I'm not gonna invert, but I'm going to brush away with a black brush. Remember, black is off. So X is gonna change my brush. I believe I told you function X earlier. It is just X changes my brush. I apologize. I'm gonna brush off everywhere around the area that I liquefied, like her ear right here, just in case. Now I didn't see any problems with her face really, but I don't want to risk changing her body in some way just by changing her hair. So I'm gonna brush off. Oh, I need to be on 100% opacity. Excuse me. Go back here, double brush. Make sure I've brushed all of that liquify off around her body. I don't want any deformities because I like a poof. Doop, doop. There we go. All right, so I've poofed her hair out a little bit, and it was just a little flat. And I poofed her dress, her sleeves. Like I said, it is not a necessary step, but it is one that I do to most of my images. I just like poofy hair and poofy clothes. And I'm gonna go ahead and hit save because my Photoshop loves to freeze and then just spin and spin and spin and spin. Okay. I think I'm gonna go ahead and dodge and burn the skin. So you can dodge and burn so many different ways. A 50% gray layer or overlay layer. You can dodge and burn with duplicate layers on multiply and screen, which I will do eventually. But I have set an action for myself, but I won't use it today just to make the layers faster. But I'm going to do the skin with curves layers, but first I'm going to turn on this black and white layer. I'm going to delete that black and white layer when I'm finished. but it helps me see the highlights and shadows better, more naturally. All right, so I'm going to use a curves adjustment layer and just tap anywhere because I typed my points in. 127 is about right in the middle, somewhere-ish. And then I'm going to pop up to my output at 222 for my dodging. You can also, there's also a dodge and burn tool, of course, I just don't really use them. Okay, I'm going to invert that layer, and I'm going to bring my flow down to about 79 or 80%, and my opacity of my brush way down to 5. And I like to just double check that I'm on a soft brush, and put my white brush on here because I'm painting it on. So she has wherever she has highlights on her skin is where I'm going to paint. So I am changing the size of my brush as I go to fit my needs. I do this with a shortcut on my keyboard. If I hold down Control Option and then I drag my mouse, it shrinks or grows how I want it to, just depending on which direction I drag. Remember, well, not mouse. Remember, I'm using a pen, Wacom pen, so it does make that easier. I just keep one hand on the keyboard and hold my pen with the other. It is a bit of an intricate process, I will admit, but I also think it pays off in the end. I'm going to dodge and burn my arms on a different layer because I will use a higher opacity brush. Now I'm going to do my burning layer for my face. So it's another curves layer. Just tap a point, 128 is fine. 58 is going to be my low, my output, and I'm going to invert the layer. And again, I'm on 5% opacity with a soft brush. 80% flow. My smoothing is at 13. I don't adjust that too often. And again, I am on a white brush. To brush on. Okay, so just for you to see and beware, it's a bit blinding when you take this black and white layer off all of a sudden. And let me group these so you can see it more easily. Here is one layer of dodge and burn. We have before and after. You can see your features are more defined. And if you wanted to make it more dramatic, you can duplicate those exactly where you had them with Command J, but that's a little dramatic. But I do like that, so I'll leave it. Okay. Now, just to save myself some extra groups, I'm going to drag those in. Nope, I'm not, because I wanted to change the opacity on this group. So I will leave them But anyway, this is my face dodge and burn. And smart people name these. But I work so destructively and merge so often that I don't find a good purpose for naming them. Now, when I'm compositing, again, it is a much bigger file with many more layers. So I do tend to label them so I don't have to search for them. So this is my body dodge. So like I told you, I'm going to bring my opacity of my brush up to about 10 or 11. And I'm going to dodge the highlights just like I did with the face. But I don't mind being a little more dramatic on the body. 10% opacity on the face would be a lot. Okay, and now my burn for the body. And I'm going to invert that layer again and just brush it on where I need it, where I see shadows. Adjusting my brush size as I go. Okay, I'm turning my black and white layer off. Close your eyes. Whew. Looks very saturated. It doesn't really look that saturated, but to my eyes, it does. And I'm going to group them just to show you. We've got before and after. Just more defined highlights and shadows. Okay. And I'm going to do one more group of dodge and burn. And that is going to be for the close. Ah, get back on there. And invert that. And turn my black and white layer back on. And I'm going to bump this opacity up to about 15 or 16. And this is my dodge. So wherever you see highlights is where you brush it on. I hate that I didn't see that her bow was twisted, but I checked back and it was twisted in every image I shot. So can't really replace it. Ooh. Should I replace it? It does bother me. Alright, I might have to do that. Let me finish this process and then I might work on that bow because it is irritating me. If you are a photographer and you are lucky enough to have people help you or have parents help you situate the kids and worry about, but I don't. I am just a mom. That was too dark. Just a mom, doing it, not raising my kids by myself, but doing this part by myself with pretty much no help posing or anything. So it really is a lot to pay attention to. I tend to miss details like that bow. Okay. I think I'm gonna dodge a few of these highlights in her hair as well. Now I'm going to do the same thing for my burn layer, and now you probably see why I have an action for this for all 6 layers so that I don't have to spend, even though I know it's only seconds, but so I don't have to spend that time creating 6 different layers. Just hit play and they show up. Actions are fabulous when you know how to use them. Let me preface that. Just like a preset that you might buy, if you don't know how to use it appropriately and adjust it, it will not be helpful. But actions like this, I mean, you're just creating basic layers and then brushing them on, so they're detail actions versus overall things like presets. Presets will affect the whole image, and if you use them in Photoshop, which I do, you can brush them off. Lightroom, you can brush them off too, but I am not skilled in Lightroom. I have not found anything that you can do in Lightroom that I could not do in Photoshop. But I also don't do 400 photo weddings and things that, you know, really need bulk editing like you would use Lightroom for. Okay, so I'm gonna chunk this black and white layer and I'll just show you the clothes. Let me group them again. Oh, Command Z, group. There we go. We've got before and after. So you see it brings, like down here on the dress, more depth to the dress. It separates and you can see these folds better now, and the folds up here better. Okay, and I'm gonna save because that was a lot of detail work that I do not want to lose.
Thank you for watching part 1 of this Snow White inspired portrait edit. If you're interested in seeing the full 2-hour tutorial, then stay tuned for the launch of my new website in September. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos and updates on my website launch.